Today's session is going to be on the myth of poor quality leads, or specifically the difference between a six-figure clinic and how our seven-figure practice owners view their lead quality. Specifically, what we're going to cover is why do most marketing campaigns struggle for your practice? And specifically, why lead quality is 100% subjective. We also want to talk about the importance of understanding this new patient journey that we keep bringing up over and over again in these modules, and specifically how those most successful clinics kind of view the patient generation process and adopt a transformative approach. So why do marketing campaigns struggle in our practices? This is really important to understand. So we're going to revisit this a couple of times over the next couple of weeks. But basically, there's a disconnect often between the promises of who's delivering the campaign and the practice's expectations. So what's happening is maybe the person driving the campaign is thinking, well, all I have to do is generate the leads. The practice is thinking all we have to do is greet them when they come in the door. And that leads us to compare lead behavior to that of a referral. And obviously in a situation of a referral, one of our colleagues, another clinician, is spending the time with that patient, identifying the problem, identifying the solution, and really recommending your practice as the solution. So we should view that referral completely different than we view from an internal marketing campaign or even an external marketing campaign for our practice. The experience of that patient is completely different. And although a lot of practices rely over 70% on referrals, we're obviously looking to continue growing our practice, which means that we need to go outside of that referral base. And it's hard. Closing rates on referrals are always going to be higher. Again, that clinician has had that conversation with the patient already. They recommended you, that told that patient that, you're the best in the area. That has a huge impact on that patient showing up, being receptive to treatment. And a lot of times they're already diagnosed with the problem. Whereas in a marketing campaign, what often happens is there's interest, there's a desire. People think they may have this problem, and we have to view that in totally different light because they don't have a diagnostic assessment at this point in time or a label or a term that they can kind of grasp onto. So non-referral traffic therefore requires a best practice approach. We need to handle it differently. We need to be smarter about it. We have to change our mindset overall. And often what happens is, practices assume that leads equal case acceptance, and that obviously is not the outcome. What we need to do is we need to work with those leads and guide them towards case acceptance. So why do marketing companies struggle? Well, obviously we're a marketing company too, so this is a little bit of an internalization on what the experiences of most of our practices have been, but most marketing professionals are not medical professionals. They're going to do a great job of generating interest in your products and services, but they may not know much about the diagnostic or the criteria or understanding kind of algorithms and things like that in terms of medicine. They often don't have direct experience in how your practice works. So they may optimize for a specific outcome, say a phone call, email, some type of electronic lead, and not really understand how the practice is working and how to optimize for that campaign. Salespeople obviously want to get a sale. Coaches, they want your success. And the focus for me, especially as your practice coach, is I don't want to just sell people. I want them to ultimately be more and more successful so they refer our company to their colleagues and peers. Marketing companies are always going to convince you that it's easy, not knowing the limitations. So they're going to say, well, hey, I generated these leads. It's easy for you to do the following. And again, there's this disconnect between the practice and the marketer and the patient stuck in the middle, often, putting up their hand and saying, well, will somebody help me? And that's what we want to go through today. We want to focus on how do we help that patient through this process. And unfortunately, a lot of marketing companies, they believe their role ends where the lead is generated. So it's like, I got their phone number, I got their email, I'm done. I don't need to do anything anymore. And that clearly is not the case overall. So why is lead quality 100% subjective? Obviously, no one can ID that a lead has specific behaviors until they contact you. So what we often say to clients is, hey, if a lead doesn't respond right away to your first call or your second call, or maybe even your third call, it's probably because they're busy. If you're like me, and very similar to each of you in the clinic, you're working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, you have good insurance, so you're at a certain income level, and it may be hard to find someone and get in contact with them during time. It's okay that we sometimes have to call our leads 3 or 4 times. It means that they're busy, which means that when we do get a hold of them, we want to focus on helping them. So the lead quality has a huge impact overall on things that we are kind of assessing subjectively. So my questions always to practices are, well, you're basing it on quality, but how long did it take you to get to that lead in terms of a time turnaround? So if that lead came in on a Monday evening, are you calling them first thing Tuesday morning? Or is it getting into Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday midday, maybe even Thursday morning? There's a very good chance that lead at that point in time has either looked for another solution, so they've reached out to another clinic, they've completely forgotten about what marketing campaign they opted into, and they may not have even read the email that came out to them from your practice yet. So it's understanding the position of the patient in that lead and why is their behavior in a specific way. And our best clinics create consistent results with the same leads. So whether we're sending the same types of leads in New York or in Chicago or LA or Houston, we see consistent results because they understand the process overall of that lead. So a qualified lead, in my opinion, is essentially anybody who signs up for a consultation for your services that is a specific condition that you are looking to treat. And that's really important because, we still have to meet with that patient to be able to qualify them. No one can say to any of us that this lead is poor quality unless we've actually met the patient in person, we've assessed to see what the problem is. If that patient has a problem and they didn't come in, it's not that they're bad quality, it's mean that our process is broken inside the practice. We need to do a better job of engaging with those patients and helping them solve the issue. And that's one of the big focuses of why you're inside of the program. So closing non-referral leads is a competitive advantage. This is my favorite line overall in this entire course. I want every single one of the practice owners watching this to focus on this exclusively. If we can develop you a non-referral marketing process where patients are coming into you week after week, month after month, year after year, that creates a competitive advantage for you in your market. Why? Because every other practice is still relying at over 70% of their patients coming in from referrals. And there's a limitation, obviously, to how many of your peers can refer. So being able to close those non-referral leads is the key to infinitely growing your practice, right? If you want to scale from 6 figures to 7 figures, you're not going to be able to do it exclusively on referrals. And you have patients in your market right now that you can treat. Every single one of the practices that's listening to this needs to understand that. There are not just tens or hundreds. There are thousands of patients in your market right now that you can treat. Our goal with our program is to find those, to bring them to you and help you engage with them, bring them in through the process, assess them, and treat them. And it requires that process that we keep talking about where, we didn't learn this in our medical training. We didn't have business-specific courses. No one often comes in and says, hey, I'm going to help you improve your practice and grow it from 6 figures to 7 figures. The patients need us to create that initial therapeutic relationship with them. So if I'm very interested in a service or a medical outcome at your practice, if I just enter my information, which is my contact info, like my phone number and email, I still need someone to have a conversation with me so that I can identify myself. What is my problem? What is the specific outcome that you're going to be able to help me with? And what are the solutions that you're going to be able to offer? So that is literally the number one obstacle that's stopping you from doubling your practice. Referrals are great. I want you to continue moving and growing your referral base, but the non-referral leads is going to be your competitive advantage over the next 12 to 24 months. So when we talk about this new patient journey, it's important to understand what each step of the journey is, right? So our goal on our job as a marketing company is going to be to attract those patients, the right type of patients, the ones that are ideal for the treatment. And we're going to help you. We're going to pass that patient off and help you engage with them in a meaningful conversation. We're also going to help you convert that patient into an appointment, getting them to show up at the practice, getting them to that consult with the key decision maker, the most responsible physician or clinician. And then often we're going to work with each of those clinicians and physicians to make sure that we're able to close that patient into a treatment. So conversations. If anyone's heard any of the podcasts that I'm on or any of the stuff that I talk about conversations a lot of the time. And the difference in conversations is I like to put them in 2 different buckets. And obviously there's lots in between, but 2 main buckets to kind of help as an example. So most of our patients are coming to us in a transactional mindset. And most of the time, unfortunately, we're actually answering the phones at a practice in a transactional mindset. So again, an example here for any of us that this is probably happening at some of your practices, where the patient calls in and says, hey, I'm interested in the following. And the first question, maybe one of the first 3 questions that we ask, even before their name, even before how we can help them is, well, what's your insurance? That's a transactional mindset. What we're doing to the patient there is we're saying to them, hey, I'm going to evaluate you based on the quality of your insurance, not on the quality of the problem that you've got. And instead, what we want to focus on is a therapeutic conversation. So get their name, ask them how you can help them. The scripts that we use are focused on this and proven on this. It's how we convert so many patients every single day at all the practices across North America that we work with. How we complete those large clinical research projects that we're known for is get the patient. It takes you honestly 2 to 3 extra minutes to get their emotional buy-in, to develop rapport, to use gratitude and say thanks for calling. We are still going to always ask that question about insurance. We're always going to tackle those other barriers, but you need to get to that therapeutic connection first. And every piece of research that I've ever seen shows that a therapeutic relationship needs about 55 to 75 minutes to be created. So when you're doing this at the front desk, when you're doing this when the patient comes into the practice, what I want you to focus on is you're taking time off that clock, off that 75 minutes for your physician or clinician, so they don't have to spend as much time engaging with that patient to be able to get their buy-in. Our referral has already spent this time with one of our colleagues. They've already sat down and spoken about the problem and the solution and who they're referring to maybe for 25 or 30 seconds. They've already taken time off of that clock. In a marketing campaign where we're interacting with a non-referral lead, that clock starts at 0. We have to build that 55 to 75 minutes. Doesn't mean that you need to spend all of that on the phone, but that initial 5 minutes or 7 minutes that you spend on the phone does start taking time off that clock. When the patient comes in, you give them a tour. When you come in and make them feel comfortable, you're taking time off that clock. So ultimately, what each of our end clinicians or most responsible providers can do is provide maybe a 25 to 30 minute consult with that patient, and we've essentially filled their clock or filled their bucket. So the new patient mindset's really important to focus on here, right? These patients have a problem that they are uncertain that you can fix, right? We are certain that we can fix. We know that we're the best clinic in the area, but the patient's not there yet, and they need you to help them get to that mindset. There's also often a lack of confidence that leads to uncertainty and inaction. So what you'll hear a lot of the time in these therapeutic conversations with patients rather than transactional is someone will say, well, I've seen this person and I've seen this person, I researched this and no one's been able to help me. They're expressing to you uncertainty. They're expressing to you that, hey, are you finally the person that's going to be able to help me with my problem? And we don't want to absolutely just, promise them something that we can't commit to, but we want to give them the confidence that we are the best solution for them. This is what we do every single day in our practice. This is what we specialize in. Would you like our help with this type of solution for your problem? So that trust has to be established for the patient to take action. If there is no trust, you should never expect a financial transaction to occur in terms of when the patient is going to give you their insurance, when the patient's going to pay to have the procedure. And often they know less than 10% about your practice. They may not know anything about your practice, which is why the image assets that we ask for. We ask for a tour. We ask for the front desk. We ask for the outside of the building. We want to give that patient more than a 10% understanding of what your practice is all about, so that when they walk in the door, it's a little familiar. When they see the friendly faces, they've seen them already. There's a familiarity. And this is going to go a really long way to helping you to convert a patient to an outcome. And they want to have their questions answered. It's okay for them to have lots of questions. We should expect that there's going to be lots of questions. None of them are stupid. None of them are silly. We need to take the time to make sure that that patient is heard and valued before they're going to be able to take action. So the hallmarks of high no-show rates. I have audited hundreds of practices in my career, and these are by far the top 5 things that I see when I audit and someone says, we're struggling with no-shows. So let's focus on this, okay? Rescheduling new cold leads. So often what happens in a practice, especially during a marketing campaign, is we show them a calendar. Oftentimes we don't get a chance of blocking everything off perfectly, and a patient goes into a slot that maybe is taken by another patient. And the first step that often a practice will take is, hey, I'm going to reschedule that person to a different time. Again, if we go back, the patient has not established trust with you. They don't know anything about your practice, and they lack confidence in action. If we go to reschedule that lead, should we expect the no-show rate to go up, or should we expect the no-show rate to go down? And all I'm suggesting is before we go to reschedule, because there's going to still be times where you have to reschedule, take a conscious effort of thinking to yourself, Is there a way for me to accommodate this patient still at that time and still provide great service? If the answer is no, then reschedule them. If the answer is that you can accommodate them, do a shorter tour, do a longer tour, give them a form to fill out, ask them how their day is going so that you can stall that 5 or 10 minutes. It goes a really, really long way to getting you that better show rate. One of the other things that's a hallmark of a no-show is not providing the patient with the actual calendar, not giving them the choice to choose in their day. And although in our script, you'll see that we give usually 1 or 2 suggestions of times to be able to control the calendar, that is different than giving the patient the opportunity to see the calendar in terms of what would they like to kind of pre-choose or pre-select as their appointment. Another hallmark, no follow-up reminders. So even though a lot of your EMRs, EHRs are going to have appointment reminders, when we do mystery shops and when we audit your practice, we're often going to find that 24-hour or 48-hour phone call is actually not being made to the patient. We shouldn't expect a patient to show up if we ourselves forgot to remind them about their appointment. When there's no initial relationship created. So when I audit phone calls and I hear a practice go right to the insurance question right away, or maybe it's a 4-minute conversation, in about 3.5 minutes is when we've used the first time that we've asked a name. Again, don't be surprised that that patient, going back to my previous slide, they don't have trust. They have questions that they're uncertain about, right? They have not developed a relationship with us yet. We should not be surprised that that patient with no initial relationship that was created no-showed for our practice. They didn't feel valued. And often when we ask for insurance before we ask their name, you should expect your no-show rate to be about 70%. And that's the one thing that I'm going to ask every single one of the practices to stop doing. Still ask the question. It's still very, very important to qualify. I just need you to ask that question after you've already built that initial relationship with the patient. So what is a 7-figure clinic mindset? Our 7-figure clinics, our best performing clinics, well, they work to perfect every single step of this process. They believe that every lead has a potential $4,000 to $10,000 in lifetime value to their practice. So they're committed to getting the most out of every single interaction with their patients. They do everything they can to serve the patient. So it comes from phone call to the first initial greeting at the front desk, to how can we provide education, to how can we keep everything on time, to how can we serve and provide a solution to that patient. They have a set process for every step of the journey. So not just our SOPs, but their own internally. We're going to give tons of this to you inside of your practice so that you can get this as well. They understand the difference between referrals and non-referrals and how they can be treated differently. My vote would be treat everybody exactly the same. So that referrals kind of like, great, I'm going to have more confidence in your solutions. And for someone who's coming in as a non-referral, again, we're building them towards that ideal patient. And my best practices, they don't blame lead quality for the issues that they're having in terms of generating leads, generating production, generating revenue inside of the practice. So the Grow system, it's installing a 7-figure patient generation system inside your practice. That's everything that we're doing here. All of the coaching, all of the back-end work from our engineers, all of the time that we spend inside the practice. We're helping you to bridge the gap between new patients and paid treatments. And we want that gap to be as short as possible, and we want it to be as robust as possible. And each step has to be tried, has to be tested, and has to be proven if you're expecting it to increase your results. You obviously, many of our practices have tried many different programs. They've tried different approaches. What we've put together is a start to finish comprehensive program that we're really confident is going to be excellent at generating an ROI for your practice.